You ate something today that came from one of the biggest companies on Earth. You just have no idea you did. Think about the last meal you didn't cook. The sandwich at the office canteen, the tray in a hospital ward, the hot dog at a stadium, the lunch your kid ate at school. There is a real chance, a far higher chance than you would ever guess, that the same single company made all of them. It feeds 5.5 billion people a year. That is not a typo. 5.5 billion meals every single year in 55,000 locations around the world. And almost nobody watching this knows its name. This is the story of the most powerful company you have never heard of. How it got that big. The rival it turned into and then swallowed. And the moment it nearly got caught doing something it should never have done. Here is the trick that keeps it invisible. It never puts its name on the food. When you eat at a ballpark, the sign says the ballpark. When you grab lunch at work, it feels like your company runs the canteen. When you're served at a black tie event, you assume the venue arranged it. You never see the company underneath. That is the entire business model. Be everywhere. Be seen nowhere. The company even describes itself that way, in its own words, as the food service company you've never heard of. In North America alone, it serves around 8.5 million meals a day in places ranging from school cafeterias to the Oscars. The Oscars. The room full of the most famous people alive, fed by a company none of them could name. Its real name is Compass Group, a British company headquartered in a quiet town outside London called Chertsey. Last year, it brought in over £46 billion. That is roughly $58 billion. It employs around 580,000 people, which makes it one of the largest private employers on the entire planet. Let that scale land for a second. 580,000 people. If every Compass employee lived in one place, they would form a city bigger than Boston. A city the size of a major metropolis that exists for one purpose. To feed you. But here is the part that should bother you. A company does not get this big by being polite. So how did a catering firm quietly take over the way the world eats? The answer starts with one man, one risky bet, and a betrayal. In 1987, the catering arm was a loser. A low-margin, unglamorous division stuck inside a giant conglomerate, the kind of business nobody fights for. One executive saw it differently. His name was Jerry Robinson. He led a buyout to take the catering business private for £163 million. At the time, that was one of the largest deals of its kind in Britain. He was betting his career that the most boring business in the building was secretly the best one. He was right. The next year, 1988, the company went public on the London Stock Exchange. And then Robinson did something extraordinary. He left. He walked across to a rival, a television and leisure giant called Granada, and started building its catering business to compete directly with the company he had just floated. The man who built Compass became the man trying to beat it. For more than a decade, the two empires circled each other. And then, in 2000, the story closed in a way almost no one saw coming. Compass and Granada merged. The rival Robinson had built up was folded back into the company he had launched. The student and the teacher became one giant. That is the moment Compass stopped being a caterer and became a machine. A machine with one instruction: grow. And grow it did by eating everything around it. In 1992, it bought the catering business that fed Britain's railway stations. In 1994, it bought an American company called Canteen, the third largest vending and food business in the United States. That single deal grew Compass by more than 100% overnight. 25,000 new staff, $1 billion in revenue, a foothold in the world's biggest market. By the end of the 1990s, Compass was operating in around 90 countries. It had gone from a written-off division to a global empire in barely a decade, not by inventing anything, but by absorbing everyone who already had the contracts. Then came the part you already touch, even if you've never known it. In 2006, Compass bought Levy Restaurants, a company that ran the food at stadiums and arenas. Today, Levy controls close to 40% of food service in North American professional sports. Read that again. At nearly half the big games you have ever attended, the beer in your hand and the food on your lap were served by Compass. You thought you were buying from the team. You were buying from a British conglomerate 4,000 miles away, and it stretches far beyond sport. Compass has fed the crowds at Wimbledon, at the O2, at Wembley Arena. It runs hospital kitchens, school dinner halls, remote oil rigs in the middle of the ocean, military bases, and corporate headquarters across roughly 45 countries. This is what economists call an invisible monopoly. Compass and two rivals named Sodexo and Aramark together control more than half of the entire U.S. contract catering market, a market worth over $70 billion a year and growing toward $110 billion by 2030. Three companies, half the market, and you've maybe heard of one of them on a good day. But a giant this hungry, operating in this many countries, eventually crosses a line. And in 2005, the line was a war zone. By the mid-2000s, Compass had a subsidiary that fed armies and aid missions in the hardest places on Earth. Liberia, East Timor, Burundi, Ethiopia. Wherever there were peacekeepers, there were contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars to feed them. The United Nations awarded these contracts through sealed bids. Secret. Locked. Supposedly impossible to game. Compass won them anyway, and it won one of them by an almost impossible margin, beating its nearest rival by, literally, pennies per ration. It then underbid its competitors in nearly every other category too. That was the detail that didn't add up. How do you beat a competitor by pennies on a sealed bid you were never supposed to see? Investigators found the answer. A United Nations procurement official had allegedly leaked confidential bid information to Compass insiders. The supposedly foolproof process had a hole in it, and Compass was on the receiving end. The total value of those UN food contracts was estimated at $237 million. And with renewals, it could have climbed past $350 million. When the story broke in 2005, Compass shares dropped more than 6% in a single morning. The company called in outside lawyers and launched its own internal investigation. Rivals who had lost those contracts sued, claiming a pattern of conspiracy that cost them hundreds of millions of dollars. Compass eventually settled for tens of millions to make it go away. The invisible giant had been seen, just for a moment. And what people saw was a company so determined to feed the world that it allegedly cheated to do it. Here is what makes Compass remarkable and a little unsettling. It survived all of it. It paid the settlements, cleaned house, and kept right on growing. Today, it is bigger than it has ever been. $58 billion, 5.5 billion meals, still invisible, still on your tray. And that is the real lesson hiding in your lunch. The companies with the most power over your daily life are almost never the ones with the famous logos. The real giants learned a long time ago that the safest place to hide is in plain sight. On a plain tray, behind a name you will never read, so the next time you eat something you didn't make, look a little closer. Ask who really fed you, because for billions of people, the answer is a single company they were never meant to notice. There are more empires like this one. Companies that own the cans you drink from, the pallets under everything you buy, the uniforms on people you walk past every single day. Subscribe, and we'll keep pulling back the curtain, one invisible giant at a time. The next one is hiding in your fridge.